I am 35M and have been married to my wife 33F for 4 years now. We dated for 6 years before getting married, and everything was perfect between all of us until recently. My mother 62F and stepfather 65M moved closer to us about a year ago and now live just 5 minutes away. Initially, it felt great having them nearby as they could spend more time with their granddaughter who turned 3 last month. My wife is currently 6 months pregnant with our second child. My mother was always somewhat critical of others, but it was never directed at my wife until recently. The problem started when my mother began making constant comments about my wife's eating habits during her pregnancy. She would tell her to avoid sugar and carbs at every opportunity. During family dinners, she would watch everything my wife ate and make unnecessary remarks. At Thanksgiving last month, she criticized all the dishes my wife brought, saying they were unhealthy and too heavy on carbs. She even started commenting on how much sugar we let our daughter eat and how it would affect her health. The relationship between them really started deteriorating when my mother began comparing my wife to my sister's wives and my cousins, always pointing out how they stayed fit during their pregnancies. She would bring up these comparisons at every family gathering, making my wife extremely uncomfortable. My wife tried to ignore these comments initially, not wanting to create any issues. But what really pushed things over the edge was an incident at a charity gala 3 weeks ago. My wife had picked out a dress she really liked for the event. When we went to my parents' house before the gala, my mother made a horrible comment about how she would look like a burrito in it. She then spent 30 minutes trying to force my wife to wear something else from her own closet, saying she was trying to help her look presentable. My wife was deeply hurt but stayed quiet to avoid creating a scene. A few days after the gala, my wife texted my mother explaining why her comments had upset her. She mentioned how the constant remarks about food, the comparisons with other women, and now the dress comment had really affected her mental peace during pregnancy. She was polite but firm in expressing her feelings. The bigger issue that bothers me is how my mother and stepfather spend most of their time with us criticizing and gossiping about my siblings. My sister Skylar 38F was estranged from the family for 3 years and recently reconciled, bringing her kids back into our lives. But my parents constantly criticize her parenting style, lifestyle choices and basically everything about her life when she's not around. They call her children undisciplined and blame it on her parenting. They do the same with my other sister Talia 40F and her husband, picking apart their marriage and life choices. They've made comments about Talia's weight gain after her divorce and remarriage, suggesting her new husband's cooking is making her unhealthy. They criticize how Talia's ex-husband gets too much time with their kids and how she should have fought harder in the custody battle. They also frequently gossip about my aunts who take care of my grandmother, my mother's mother. They claim my aunts are after my grandmother's money and aren't taking proper care of her. My wife and I usually just sit there uncomfortably during these gossip sessions. I would try to show my disinterest by staying on my phone, but now I realize I should have been more direct in shutting it down. After the dress incident, my mother sent what I would call a half-hearted apology text to my wife. It was basically a typical non-apology saying sorry if you were offended. When my wife didn't respond immediately as she wanted to have a proper discussion about all the issues, my mother got annoyed. She texted back saying she had already apologized and didn't understand why more discussion was needed. I tried explaining that some people need proper closure through an actual conversation, but she dismissed it with sarcasm. Things got worse when my sister Talia called me saying mom had been venting to her about the situation, calling my wife hormonal and difficult. She was telling everyone that my wife was being oversensitive due to pregnancy. Talia also revealed that she had her own issues with mom, who had been making hurtful comments about her weight gain and never properly apologized. We tried setting up a discussion with my mother multiple times, but something always came up. First she said she was busy with her book club, then she had to attend to my grandmother, then she needed to help my stepfather with something. Finally last week we managed to have a video call. My wife started by calmly explaining that she needed space initially to process her feelings and apologized for taking time to respond. But throughout her explanation, I noticed my mother rolling her eyes and smirking. When I called her out on it, she blamed it on cataracts, which I know she doesn't have. We expressed how important resolving this issue was to us as we wanted to host Christmas and do our gender reveal with the whole family. My mother remained stiff and defensive, saying fine, she would just pull back completely if that's what we wanted. When we tried explaining we wanted a positive environment for our daughter, she suddenly started talking about how hard it was for her as a single mother. Despite us asking her to stop, she kept going on about how she raised us alone after our father left, trying to make herself the victim. My pregnant wife got extremely upset and ended the call. Now my mother and stepfather maintain that she already apologized and don't understand why we need more discussion. But I refuse to sweep this under the rug like my siblings do. I've decided not to let them see my family until my mother can have a genuine discussion without being defensive or dismissive. I don't want my wife and children to be the subject of their gossip sessions like my siblings are. My sisters think I'm being too harsh, but I believe I'm protecting my family. Some of my relatives are saying I shouldn't keep a grandmother from her grandchild, but I don't want my daughter growing up thinking it's okay for people to treat you badly and get away with it just because they're family. Ida? Update 1. After my original post, things spiraled in ways I hadn't expected. My stepfather started reaching out to my siblings systematically, trying to convince them to talk to me about letting our mom see the family. He called Skylar first, then Talia, and even tried reaching out to our step-siblings from his previous marriage who we barely talked to. He told everyone that mom was completely heartbroken, crying every day, and couldn't eat or sleep properly. My sister Talia visited me last weekend and revealed that there was more going on behind the scenes. She warned me that mom was spreading a completely different version of events to the extended family during their weekly family video calls that my wife and I had stopped attending after the incident. Through my cousin Lisa, I discovered exactly what story mom was telling everyone. She painted a picture of my wife becoming increasingly controlling after getting pregnant with our second child. According to her version, my wife had always been jealous of mom's close relationship with our daughter. She claimed my wife would get annoyed whenever our daughter wanted to spend time with her grandmother. Mom told everyone that my wife was using this minor comment about a dress as an excuse to finally keep her away from her grandchild. What really angered me was discovering that mom had been showing everyone the text conversation with my wife, but in a very manipulative way. She would show selective screenshots where my wife was expressing her hurt feelings, but conveniently left out her own sarcastic responses and the parts where she dismissed my wife's feelings. She also didn't show the messages about all her previous comments regarding food and weight. My stepfather then tried a different approach to handle the situation. He called me saying he just wanted to have coffee and understand my perspective better. I agreed to meet him alone at a local cafe, thinking maybe he could be a mediator. When I met him, he spent an hour telling me how my mother had completely changed since this happened. He claimed she had started seeing a counselor to work on her communication issues and was genuinely trying to be better. He showed me screenshots of therapy appointment confirmations and self-help books she had ordered. I was actually considering giving her another chance at this point, thinking maybe this incident had been a wake-up call for her. But then my sister Skylar reached out with information that changed everything. She revealed that mom had done exactly the same thing to her before she went no contact years ago. Mom would make passive-aggressive comments about her weight and parenting, then play victim when confronted. When Skylar tried to discuss these issues, mom would twist the story to make Skylar look like the aggressor. Skylar said mom never really changed, she just found new targets when Skylar stopped engaging. The situation reached its peak when my wife received a group text from mom's side of the family. Several aunts and cousins who we only see during holidays started attacking my wife. They told her to get over herself and stop keeping a grandmother from her grandchild. They said pregnancy was not an excuse to be so sensitive and that their generation managed to handle criticism without making such a big deal. Some even brought up how their own mothers-in-law were much more critical, but they never complained. My wife was extremely upset after reading all these messages. She started having contractions from the stress and we had to call her doctor. This really scared me because she's only in her second trimester. After ensuring she was okay, I called my mother and confronted her about involving the extended family in our private matter. Instead of apologizing for causing stress to a pregnant woman, she broke down crying, saying she was being treated unfairly. She said she didn't deserve this treatment from her own son and that if anything happened to her because of this stress, I would regret treating her this way for the rest of my life. My stepfather then sent me a series of texts saying I was killing my mother with stress. He said if she ended up in the hospital it would be my fault and he would make sure everyone knew what I had done to my own mother. I blocked both their numbers after this obvious manipulation attempt. My wife and unborn baby's health is my primary concern and I won't let them cause any more stress. Since then, many relatives have been posting passive-aggressive comments on social media about ungrateful children and the importance of family. They share those typical quotes about how nobody will love you like your mother does. I've had to mute most of them to maintain my sanity. Even distant relatives who haven't spoken to us in years are suddenly experts on our situation. Talia called me yesterday saying she's now considering going low contact as well after seeing how mom is handling this situation. She said watching mom manipulate the entire family against us made her realize why Skylar had stayed away for so long. I'm more convinced than ever that I made the right decision. My wife needs peace during her pregnancy and I won't let anyone, including my mother, affect her health with their manipulative drama. Update: 2 things have taken an unexpected and disturbing turn. Last week Skylar messaged me about something that made my blood boil. She discovered that mom had created a private Facebook group titled Praying for My Grandchildren. She invited all our relatives, old family friends, and even some people from her church to join. In this group she regularly posts about how much she misses our daughter, sharing old photos with dramatic captions about being kept away from family during the holidays. What really shocked me was finding out she had secretly recorded our last video call where my wife got upset. She shared selected clips from this recording in the group, specifically the part where my wife said to hang up, to show how my wife supposedly yelled at her without provocation. She deliberately left out all the parts showing her own eye-rolling, smirking, and dismissive behavior that led to that moment. My cousin Lisa, who was part of the group, felt uncomfortable with how things were being twisted and sent me screenshots. Mom had written long emotional posts about how pregnancy had drastically changed my wife's personality and how she feared I was being manipulated. She even suggested my wife might have some kind of personality disorder because her reactions were supposedly too extreme. She wrote about how she had raised me to be strong but now watched helplessly as I was controlled by my wife. Skylar tried defending us in the group, explaining the real reason behind the conflict and how mom's behavior was problematic. Mom immediately removed her from the group and then made another post about how sad she was that both her children had partners who turned them against their own mother. She painted herself as this loving mother and grandmother who was being unfairly punished for one small comment about a dress. My stepfather has been actively fueling the fire in this group. He shares daily updates about mom's emotional state, writing about how she cries herself to sleep missing our daughter. He posted about mom having to start taking anxiety medication because of this situation, trying to guilt trip me through other relatives. He even shared links about parental alienation, implying that's what my wife was doing. The most infuriating part was when they started discussing my wife's past relationships. Mom somehow got in touch with someone who knew my wife during college and found out about her previous breakup from 12 years ago. They were analyzing this relationship in the group, suggesting it showed a pattern of controlling behavior because that relationship also ended badly. They were basically character assassinating my wife to justify their own behavior. I've had enough of this smear campaign. I sent mom a final message telling her I knew about the Facebook group and her attempts to defame my wife. I explained how secretly recording our conversation and sharing it without consent was a new low, and how trying to diagnose my wife with mental health issues just showed her own toxic behavior. She responded with paragraphs about how I was misunderstanding everything. According to her, the group was just her way of getting emotional support during this difficult time. She said sharing the recording was necessary because everyone kept asking what really happened. But I saw the screenshots. This was a calculated attempt to turn everyone against my wife while playing the victim herself. I've decided to go completely no contact. I don't want my children growing up around someone who would secretly record conversations and try to destroy their mother's reputation. What if mom starts doing the same thing to them when they're older and disagree with her about something? My wife and I are focusing on preparing for our new baby and keeping stress away from our lives. Skylar and Talia are fully supporting my decision now. They've seen the true extent of mom's manipulation through this group and understand why protecting our families from her behavior is necessary. Update 3: My wife delivered our baby boy last week. The delivery went smoothly and both mother and baby are doing well. As decided, we didn't inform my mother or stepfather about the birth. Several relatives who still maintain contact with us suggested that having a new grandchild might soften mom's heart and make her realize what she was losing. My aunt suggested that we at least send her pictures of the baby as an olive branch. But just before the delivery, we discovered something that cemented our decision to maintain no contact. One of my wife's colleagues told her that mom had actually visited her workplace 2 weeks before her maternity leave started. Mom tried to speak with my wife's boss, spinning some story about being a concerned mother-in-law. She claimed she was worried that my wife's pregnancy hormones were making her unstable and she feared for our daughter's safety. She even suggested that my wife's work performance might be affected by her mental state. Thankfully, my wife had worked at this company for 8 years and her boss knew her character well enough to see through these allegations. Her boss later told her about this incident to warn her about what was happening behind her back. This attempted sabotage of my wife's career showed me that going no contact was absolutely the right decision. Last week, my stepfather sent a long email after somehow finding out about the birth through mutual friends. He wrote that mom was devastated about missing her grandson's birth and was willing to do anything to reconcile, including going to family counseling with us. But in the same email, he also included several guilt-tripping statements about how selfish we were for keeping this joy from a grandmother and how karma would get us one day for such cruel behavior. Skylar and Talia have also reduced contact with mom significantly after learning about the workplace incident. The Facebook group is still active but most relatives have started leaving it as they see mom's true colors. Only the most toxic family members still support her campaign against us. Last week, someone from the group sent me screenshots of mom posting about her right to access her grandchildren and looking into grandparents' rights laws. Our daughter does ask about grandma sometimes, which is hard. We've started taking her to more playdates and activities to keep her busy. My wife's parents have been amazing through all this, stepping up their involvement to give our kids the grandparent love they deserve. They visit regularly and make our daughter feel special and loved. I've had some moments of doubt, especially when our son was born, wondering if I'm doing the right thing. But then I remember the Facebook group, the secret recording, the workplace incident, and realized that someone who could do these things to their own family isn't safe to have around our children. Some relatives say I'm being too harsh, that family should always forgive each other. But I believe protecting my wife and children from toxic behavior is more important than maintaining a superficial relationship. I don't see us ever reconciling with my mother unless she acknowledges and takes responsibility for all her actions, the initial comments, the Facebook group, the workplace incident, and her attempts to defame my wife. But honestly, based on her pattern of behavior, I don't think that will ever happen. Some distances are better maintained for everyone's peace and mental health. This will be my final update. Thank you to everyone who supported us through this difficult time. We're focusing on our growing family now and creating a positive environment for our children.